Starting off this countdown at number 10, the Amityville House. 30 miles outside of New York City, nestled in the Long Island town of Amityville, stands the house forever linked to the Amityville horror phenomenon. On November 13th, 1974, the state was the scene of a horrible event. Using a .35 Marlin rifle, 23-year-old Ronald J. DeFaro Jr. took the lives of his entire family while they were asleep, which included his parents and his 4 siblings. 13 months later, the Lutz family purchased the home at a drastically reduced price of $80,000, but only lasted 28 days before leaving it. Their spine-tingling tales of paranormal activity are what propelled the legend of the Amityville horror and spawned a torrent of books, documentaries, and films. George was said to wake up at 3:15 a.m. every morning, which was around the time Ron carried out his murders. The Lutz family claimed many things happening in the house, like the smell of strange odors, see green slime oozing out of the walls and keyholes, and experience cold spots in certain areas of the house. When a priest came to bless the house, he allegedly heard her voice scream, "Get out." He told the Lutzes to never sleep in that particular room of the house ever again. Number 9, Grey Gardens. The Grand East Hampton estate, known as Grey Gardens, has a fascinating history with many ups and downs. The 4 acres of land was purchased by a wealthy couple in 1895 before the home was built in the early 1900s. By 1913, it was sold to the president of a coal company. Then later in 1923, the home was sold to Edith Bale. After a series of misfortunes and financial losses, the home fell into despair and was overrun by cats and raccoons, and perhaps something else not from our world. Edith held on to the property until her passing in 1977, and her spirit is said to remain at Grey Gardens, watching over the house. Among the believers is author and journalist Sally Quinn, best known for her column in the Washington Post, who purchased the home from her daughter Little Edie in 1979, and she swears that it's haunted. Now coming in at number 8, Winchester Mystery House. According to legend, the Victorian mansion that sits on a busy street in San Jose, California is haunted by the ghosts of everyone that unfortunately passed away by a Winchester rifle. In order to appease them, the house's owner, Sarah Winchester, the heir to the Winchester rifle fortune, and the founder's widow, added room after room to the house to add more space for the deceased. Winchester didn't simply add rooms, however. She created a labyrinth filled with halls that led nowhere, cut-off staircases, sloping floors, and a rabbit warren of chambers. According to ABC News, the house has 10,000 windows, 2,000 doors, 47 fireplaces, 40 staircases, 13 bathrooms, and 9 kitchens. Since Winchester passed away in 1922, the home has hosted tours for those willing to walk among the Winchester ghosts. Number 7, Bell Witch. In the early 1800s, John Bell bought a tract of farmland along Tennessee's Red River. Bell and his family thrived on the farm until they started to see strange-looking animals around the property, most notably a dog with a rabbit's head. From that point on, the family was plagued by unseen forces, largely targeted at Bell and his daughter Betsy. They experienced physical attacks, heard unexplained noises, and even spoke with the entity, who in at least one account identified herself as Bell's former neighbor, Kate Batts, who was exacting revenge from beyond the grave. The entity is rumored to have prevented Betsy's marriage. Here at number 6, Mercer Williams. Located across from one of Savannah, Georgia's most famous and pristine squares is the Mercer Williams house, and it dates back to 1860. In the 1970s, famed preservationist and antiques dealer Jim Williams restored the home to its former glory after years of neglect. This home played host to 3 untimely passings, including 11-year-old Tommy Downs when he fell off the roof in 1969, the 1981 fatal shooting of Danny Hansford by Williams, and Williams himself when he passed in the same room as Danny less than a year after being cleared of Danny's passing in a 4th trial. That story is also from the best-selling book Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil. Much like the rest of the city, the home was supposedly built right on top of unmarked graves. Rumors about the crime and ghost stories continue to swirl to this day. Halfway at number 5, Ackley House. Nicknamed Ackley House after its one-time occupants, the Ackley family, this classic Queen Anne sits on the Hudson River across from Sleepy Hollow, New York. The many ghosts who roamed the halls were nothing but friendly. Then it came time to sell the home in the late 1980s. After some time on the market, the Stambosky family put down a down payment and were ready to relocate from Manhattan when a contractor made a comment about the home's haunted reputation. The Ackleys then found themselves entangled in a legal battle over whether or not they should have disclosed the haunted nature of the house. In a landmark decision now referred to as the Ghostbusters ruling, Ackley House was deemed haunted by the New York Supreme Court, and the buyers were able to pull out of the sale while also getting half of their down payment back. This house has since been home to several celebrities, including musician Ingrid Michaelson. Number 4, the Villisca Axe Murder House. On June 10, 1912, Josiah and Sarah Moore were bludgeoned till they ended up passing away inside of their home in Villisca, Iowa. Their 4 children and 2 friends who were spending the night also passed away, and to this day the crime remains unsolved. Their home is considered to be one of the most haunted houses in the country, and guests are drawn to it. People even pay more than $400 to stay just one night. Tours have been cut short by children's voices, falling lamps, moving ladders, and flying objects, says the Murder House website. And in 2014, a paranormal investigator stabbed himself after spending the night. Number 3, Villa de Vichi. Located near Lake Como, Italy, the House of Witches dates back to 1854 to 1857, when it was built as a summer house for Count Felix de Vichi. The family was only able to spend a few years there after their lives ended in a tragedy right after it was built. First, the architect passed away after a year of construction. Then in 1862, Count de Vichi came home to discover that someone had taken his wife's life and his daughter was missing. When he could not find her after a year of searching, he passed away by taking his own life. His brother then moved into the home and his family continued to live there until World War II. Now it's been vacant since the 1960s, and an avalanche in 2002 wiped out all the houses in the area except for this one. Coincidence? Number 2, the Lemp Mansion. The Lemp Mansion in St. Louis, which is known to be one of the most haunted places in America due to tragic history. The 33-room home was built in the 1860s by William Lemp, a successful brewery owner who ended up taking his own life in 1904 after the youngest of his 4 sons, Frederick, passed away. A few years later, his wife also passed of cancer in the house. Then in 1922, William Lemp Jr. shot himself in the same room. William Sr. took his own life himself. Then Charles Lemp, William's 3rd son, shot his dog in the basement of the home and then took his life in his room. That same year, the house was sold and transformed into a boarding house, where reports of hauntings began. According to Destination America, witnesses have experienced burning sensations and slamming doors. Today, the Lemp Mansion is a restaurant and inn that holds events. On Saturday night, the inn even hosts a murder mystery dinner. Now coming in at number 1, the Conjuring House. I'm sure we all know about this one, but if not, I'll tell you all about it. In 1971, the Perron family moved into a 14-room farmhouse in Harrisville, Rhode Island, where Carolyn, Roger, and their 5 daughters began to notice strange things happening almost immediately after they moved in. Carolyn would notice that the broom went missing, or seemed to move from place to place on its own. She would hear the sound of something scraping against the kettle in the kitchen when no one was in there. She'd find small piles of dirt in the center of a newly cleaned kitchen floor. Carolyn allegedly researched the history of the home and discovered that it had been in the same family for 8 generations, and that many of them had passed away under mysterious and horrible circumstances. Several of the children had drowned in a nearby creek. One was murdered, and a few of them hanged themselves in the attic. Over the 10 years that the family lived in the house, the Warrens made multiple trips to investigate. At one point, Lorraine Warren conducted a seance to attempt to contact the spirits that were possessing the family. During the seance, Carolyn became possessed, speaking in tongues and rising from the ground in her chair. Starting off at number 10, Hibbing High School. Hibbing High School in Minnesota is not your typically average school building. Here, the staircases are marble, the railings are brass, the art walls hold the whole, almost medieval design together. The auditorium was modeled after the Capitol Theater, which was a site itself. And when Bob Dylan was still Robert Zimmerman and a student at Hibbing High, he performed on the auditorium stage during a talent show. But even with star performances and a stunning design, it's a lone seat inside the auditorium that attracts the most attention from anyone. The story goes that the first stage manager, named Bill, was employed at the school from 1927 to the late 1960s, and he passed away after a chandelier fell on his head. Rumors soon arose that Bill never really left his favorite seat in the theater, named J47. In the early 90s, Chuck Perry, who at the point had been stage manager since 1979, took a series of photographs of the auditorium after a woman reported feeling a cold chill as she walked around the J47 row. And lo and behold, one of the photographs taken with a Polaroid camera showed a man sitting in J47, wearing formal clothes and a top hat. Number 9, El Paso High School. When it comes to the scary school in America, El Paso High School in Texas supposedly has them all beat. Its ghost stories range from sealed off hallways full of mist and strange goo dripping from the ceiling to hidden classrooms beneath the building no one knew existed. However, nothing compares to the photo of the graduating class of 1985. While the woman in the center is blurry, there is no doubt that she is there. Or so you think. According to former students, there was no one standing there when the picture was taken, nor can the female in question be identified. Some believe the figure to be a young girl who had taken her own life years before jumping from a balcony connected to the misty hallway. Number 8, Parker Rhodes Elementary. You know the saying, you never leave anyone behind because if you do, that's where they might stay? Well, that's the lesson learned at this school, which was built on an old cemetery ground. As a matter of fact, in the 1950s, Missouri ordered Leaf Brown Cemetery to dig up all the bodies in the cemetery and move them to another area prior to the construction of the neighborhood and school there. But it's rumored that they left one body behind. And you guessed it, it's the ghost of the deceased body that haunts Parker Rhodes School. Apparently, the ghost only likes kids there. The teachers and other staff reportedly haven't seen it, but the students have seen a ghost in the bathrooms and have identified her as a woman in a black dress with long, wavy blonde hair and no eyes. Coming in at number 7, Lee Williams High School. When your school sits atop a frontier town once involved in mining, railroading, and cattle, driving back back to when Arizona was still considered a territory, you're bound to come across a vengeful spirit or two. In fact, students of Lee Williams High School claim they've seen a man in a bowler hat roaming the halls quite frequently, as well as a young girl who calls out at night that she wants to go out and play. Pair this with the unusual flickering lights and motion detectors going off by themselves, and you've got yourself a good old-fashioned haunting, right? Furthermore, after renovations in 2010, part of the football field is now located directly on top of Old Pioneer Cemetery, which might explain why people have witnessed ghosts in prairie gowns and suits appear during graduation events on the field. There were also 7 coffins that were dug up during renovations that might also play a role in the matter. Number 6. Old Portland High School. The old high school in Portland, Michigan originally opened in 1881. According to a long-standing urban legend, a 14-year-old student was crushed till she passed away underneath a pile of gym bleachers that collapsed on her in 1918. The janitor who reportedly failed to fix the bleachers after learning they were faulty had disappeared. It was believed that the student's father took the life of the janitor out of revenge for his daughter's passing. He then burned the body and set the school on fire. The school was then rebuilt and reopened in 1920. However, the ghosts of the girls and the janitor remained. Decades later, the school was converted into a housing complex named Old School Manor. It then served as housing between 1992 and 2008, and during this time several tenants reported that their household items would disappear, only to be found stacked on top of one another in a different room. Others reported hearing the disconnected school bells ringing, and some have even encountered the ghost of the student who allegedly slapped them on the back. One tenant in particular had a horrendous experience with the janitor's ghost. She alleged that the ghost would terrorize her 2-year-old daughter and demand that she tell her mother they had to move out of their apartment. Halfway, number 5. Cathedral High School. Facing your fears is considered the best way to overcome them, but Cathedral High School might take that step a bit too far. Embracing the fact that the premises were built on the remains of an old cavalry cemetery, headstones of the deceased, which have been dug up during renovations through the years, are prominently displayed around the school football field. To add insult to injury, the school's mascot is the Phantoms in honor of the land's heritage. While students and teachers consider all of this to be a point of pride and rarely even entertain the notion that the school might be haunted, maintenance workers don't share their sentiments. They claim that along with seeing and hearing the spirits of the once living, they literally feel their presence at night, often accompanied by cold spots throughout the property, which is located in sunny Los Angeles, California. Number 4. Las Vegas High School. Las Vegas is all glitz, glamour, money, and, well, ghosts. There are quite a few haunted places in Sin City, including Zach Bagans, the Haunted Museum, Westgate, and the Lugshore. In 1931, the Las Vegas Academy of the Arts was known as Las Vegas High School. It was the first official high school in the city and the place where the ghost of the former teacher, Mr. Petrie, roamed after he passed in a mysterious fire. Even after the school converted into an arts academy, rumors of the haunting continued. Some people reported seeing a man in a white tux occupying a particular seat in the theater, very similar to what happens at Hibbing High School, which we talked about at number 10. Meanwhile, others felt sharp temperature drops and experienced intense feelings of sadness and despair whenever they entered the building. Number 3. Roy High School. Roy High School in Utah is home to many ghosts, which all appear to have their own specific quirks. For instance, the one known as Mabel lurks around the auditorium backstage near a set of winding stairs. She's not shy though, as she tends to tinker with the lighting and move props around. Another auditorium ghost is said to wear a purple hat and try to convince students to follow her, but gives off a much too evil vibe to dare try. Others include a floating head ghost in the upper left balcony and another who roams in the halls. It is believed that he passed after being hit by a train walking to school. Students also say they can feel him watching them if they are wandering around alone. Coming in at number 2, Lincoln High School. Lincoln High School in South Dakota opened its doors on October 19, 1965 with an opening class of about 1,300 students. The original student body quickly started to grow as the years passed, and by the end of the decade there were around 2,000 students who were enrolled at the school. As the years went on, it started to become one of the best academic schools in the area. Though there have been no known passings of people at the school, that doesn't change the fact that many people have reported ghostly experiences. And here's a video of one of the teachers who worked at the school for 17 years sharing her experiences.
Last year in the fall, I was in my room. It was in the evening. I was working on some stuff here, and my daughter was here with me. And I was the only one in my room other than my daughter. All the rest of the rooms going this way were all dark. And we'd happened to look up, and I saw somebody walk by the windows, and there was a flash of light, like a flashlight going around the room. So I went next door and I opened the door. There was not a soul in the room. Everything was dark. There was no custodians around in the building or in that room.
Now at number 1, St. Charles East High School. Ghosts are scary enough as it is, but when they're accompanied by a horrifyingly gruesome backstory, they become the fuel of nightmares. St. Charles East High School in Illinois is where it is rumored that the spirit of a former freshman girl haunts the halls. Said to have been playing her flute in the band room when a deranged janitor assaulted and took her life. She was then cut into pieces and stuffed in various lockers. Since then, band students occasionally run across body parts in their lockers, only to have them disappear right in front of them. Others claim to hear the sound of a faint flute being played when the room is quiet and when they are alone. Worst of all, many have had their flutes disappear mysteriously, while others notice signs that their instrument has been played while left at the school overnight.
Coming in at number 10, we have Pennhurst Asylum. So Pennhurst Asylum began as a school for the disabled in 1908, but it didn't take long until it took a turn for the worse. So much happened at this asylum, but let me give you just a touch of what this place was about. A patient who suffered in the asylum eventually sued them in a federal class action lawsuit. The reason was because they violated the patient's 8th and 14th Amendment rights, which are to provide appropriate care and education. So what did they do? Well, some of the alleged abuses included strapping adult patients into child cribs, lacing problematic patients' drinks and food, physically hitting patients, and when patients would bite a doctor, they would rip out their teeth to ensure that it would never happen again. This caused many patients to pass away in that very hospital. Eventually, Pennhurst closed their doors in 1987, but the place reeks of the paranormal. Investigators claim to be pushed when they walk in the halls, voices telling them to get out, and even the apparitions of former patients. Now the place is a haunted Halloween attraction, so go check it out. At number 9, we have the Gonjam Psychiatric Hospital. I first found out about this place from a Korean horror called Gonjam Haunted Asylum. Now this movie was released in 2018, but the movie wasn't far from reality because this hospital did exist with tons of paranormal activity. According to local lore, patients started dying mysteriously at the hospital some 10 years ago, eventually forcing its closure. It is now an abandoned, dirty building with only the most disturbing remnants of its former life. Many blame the failure to the murderous owner of the place. People claimed he kept patients as hostages, only to flee to the States when the families of the deceased demanded explanations. However, I hate to break it to you, but in reality, the hospital's closure was due to finances regarding a new sewage treatment facility. This doesn't change the fact that when people trespass, they get glimpses of paranormal activity, shadows of apparitions. I mean, the place looks haunted. It was only right it got a ghost story. At a number 8 spot, we have Denbigh Asylum. The asylum is located in the heart of North Wales, and the buildings are said to be built all the way back in 1848. Many claim this is the most haunted place in all of the United Kingdom. This asylum housed some of the most dangerous and mentally insane individuals, but also housed people who disappointed their families, making it a mix of sane and insane people. To make things worse, it was designed to fit 200 patients, but at its peak, it had over 1,500 patients and 1,000 staff members. When investigators go into the now abandoned asylum, they report hearing terrifying screams and feelings of claustrophobia as they experience overcrowding firsthand. Now the area is littered with vandalism, and others have reported to have conducted seances and other rituals in the area, with even one exorcism happening at the church which is attached to the asylum. At our number 7 spot, we have Athens Lunatic Asylum. This mental asylum stood from 1874 up until 1993. However, some pretty scary stuff occurred within these walls. Patients were mistreated, physically abused, not fed, strapped to their beds, and even lobotomized, which was basically brain surgery before we knew how to do proper brain surgery, which caused many patients to suffer from life-changing side effects and disabilities. One particular patient named Margaret Schilling went missing in 1979 for 42 days. Her corpse would be later found in the abandoned area in the hospital. The odd thing was that her body was found completely naked with her clothes folded neatly beside her, and it began rotting so bad it left a permanent stain behind that could still be seen to this day. In attempts to hide the stain, workers found it impossible to clean up the imprint left from her body, and now it's said that the abused patients of the asylum still haunt the building, including the spirit of Margaret, with witnesses saying that they saw her ghost trying to leave the room she was stuck in. With the acts of horror and mistreatment that went on in this asylum, it's no wonder that the ghosts of the abused patients still linger in this very building. At a number 6 spot, we have Trenton Psychiatric Hospital. Trenton Psychiatric Hospital, originally named New Jersey State Lunatic Asylum, has a long history of helping mentally ill patients and even harming them. The hospital first opened in 1848 and welcomed 86 patients. The first superintendent, Horace, was a good man and provided excellent care for the people in his custody. It took a turn for the worse when Dr. Henry Cotton took over. The doctor believed he could cure mental illness by removing organs. He believed that the infections caused mental illness, so he tested it by removing his patients' teeth, limbs, or any body part with slight signs of infection. This would cause dozens of patients to pass away, and many claim that you can hear the screams of the patients inside the walls of the hospital. Others even claim to see the apparition of Dr. Cotton and other ghosts with missing limbs. Unfortunately, after his passing in 1933, a review found his medical procedures caused 45% of his patients to perish. The irony was the doctor was clinically clinically insane as well. At the Humpver list, we have Beechworth Lunatic Asylum. Beechworth Asylum, known as Mayday Lunatic Asylum, operated from 1867 to 1995 in Beechworth, Victoria, Australia. Over those 128 years, over 9,000 patients passed away within its walls, and people claim that some still remain. Many see faces floating in the windows, while others see the apparitions of people who passed there. Many have spoken of the figure of a man who appears near the cellar and then completely vanishes within a second. Matron Sharp, who spent most of her life there, has been spotted on more than one occasion appearing as a grey hooded apparition in the corner of dark rooms. Then on top of that, doors swing open by themselves, and at other times, mysterious screams are heard. Now the area is used for tourism and artistic uses, but remember, the place claimed the lives of 9,000 people. There's bound to be at least one there if you take a visit. At a number 4 spot, we have Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum. This is a facility located in West Virginia, which was constructed during the time of the Civil War, and it was intended to keep about 250 patients, but ultimately held more than 2,400, including the notorious Charles Manson for a brief period. Numerous people were shackled to objects, lobotomized with ice picks, and subjected to terrible maltreatment in addition to their extreme congestion. There are many apparitions, including Ruth, the patient who is still insane and enjoys attacking people in the hospital. In addition, there are uniformed army ghosts roaming the asylum's halls because it served as a temporary military base during the Civil War. Numerous people have reported hearing voices telling them to leave as well. A Ghost Adventures crew investigated the asylum and came out of it saying, quote, "A recipe for trapped souls." So visit it and you may see why. All the way at a number 3 spot, we have St. Augustine's Asylum. Also known as the Kent County Lunatic Asylum, St. Augustine's Asylum is located in Chatham, Kent, England. It was opened from 1876 to 1993, and in those 117 years, the building was home to an immense amount of human suffering. In the 1970s, a nurse at the asylum teamed up with a local university researcher to create a lengthy report on all the inhumane injustices that they witnessed within the walls. Most notably, they detailed excessive use of electroshock therapy on patients, whether the treatment was warranted or not. Then they put up a report detailing 70 instances of abuse and neglect, forcing the health authority to set up an inquiry. At a number 2 spot, we have Danvers Lunatic Asylum. The asylum was built in Danvers, Massachusetts, in a place formerly known as the Salem Village. And yes, I mean the Salem Village that was the site of the famous witch trials of 1692. The building was a direct inspiration from H.P. Lovecraft's Arkham Sanatorium, which then inspired Arkham Asylum from Batman. Just like the Arkham Asylum in Batman, this asylum had a number of horrific stories from within. Patients claim the place to be a modern concentration camp, which is saying a lot. The asylum has many issues, including overcrowding, which resulted in many missing patients, who many passed away from starvation. This asylum is also known as the birthplace of the prefrontal lobotomy, which is basically a medieval brain surgery I mentioned before. Stealing our number 1 spot on this list, we have the Waverly Hills Sanatorium. This facility was built in Louisville, Kentucky in 1910. Just like many others on this list, the sanatorium had a problem with overcrowding as it housed many suffering from tuberculosis crisis in the United States at the time. Now it's believed that this building claimed the lives of 50,000 people with a rate of 1 person every 10 minutes. I know, that's crazy. Bodies were sent out of the building through the body chute to hide them from other patients, which is shown here. Waverly was known to experiment on their patients. This includes heliotherapy with the sun, electroshock therapy, and sometimes they would break a patient's ribs to collapse their lungs, then re-inflating them with balloons in hopes to cure them. Many say the patients of the deceased still wander the halls. More specifically, there is a patient named the Creeper who wanders the halls, and it feeds off of sickness and has been reported to climb along the walls and the ceilings of the building. This sounds like a perfect spot to shoot a horror movie, but I think it'll get too real if they do film in this building. At a number 10 spot, we have the Kefuni Shrine. This place is very well known as a beautiful sightseeing spot in Kyoto, Japan, but for many locals, the dark history makes them have a different perspective of the place. Kefuni Shrine is known as the birthplace of a terrifying ritual known as the Ishunokuku Mari, which refers to placing a curse on someone by placing a nail through a straw effigy, which is sort of like a voodoo doll. Then you nail it onto a tree around the hours of 1 to 3 a.m. We did a 3 a.m. video, so you already know how cursed that time is. If anyone is caught watching this ritual, the person conducting the ritual must eliminate that person, or else the curse will reflect back onto them. The performer usually wears a white kimono, sandals, and places 3 burning candles on top of their head. If you visit the shrine to this day, you will find many trees with holes on it, presumably from the nails of those attempting this scary ritual. At our number 9 spot, we have the Awashima Shrine. There is no doubt Japan is a very beautiful place, meaning that most of the shrines I mentioned on this list are very visitable, so I had to mention Awashima Shrine to change your mind on that. This shrine contains over 20,000 dolls who are believed to be possessed from its past owners. The dolls will be left at the shrine as an offering from women to pray for fertility and for safe birth. Come on, look at this place. Tell me you would go here willingly. According to legend, Empress Zengu was journeying home from a war overseas. As she was on her way back home, a huge storm took over the seas and broke the boat partially. This caused the Empress to pray to the gods, and apparently they brought her back safely to Tomagashina. Here she would build the Awashima Shrine to thank the gods for their service. People believe that these dolls over time would develop souls, so the reason why many donate it is to get rid of the curse trapped inside of these dolls that caused many of the problems and issues within their own life. At number 8 spot, we have the Dashogun Shrine. This shrine was originally built by Emperor Kanmu in 794. It was originally built to break the evil coming from all sorts of directions, whether this be from physical enemies or spiritual beings. This became a place where people would go to pray for protection. Specifically, many would call for the god of the stars, Dashogun. Enshrined at the place are many Japanese figures fighting a beast named the Nu. A Nu is a Japanese yokai described as having the head of a monkey, the body of a raccoon dog, legs of a tiger, and a snake for a tail. Pretty terrifying, right? Because these creatures can also transform into a black cloud and fly all over the place. Back in the early years of its construction, it said that the current emperor sent out these powerful warriors to kill it and make the place peaceful at last. Except many believe the Nu is still out there near the shrine, with reports of seeing the creature in the forest surrounding the area. At our number 7 spot, with the Meningi Temple. Meningi Temple is located in Iwamizawa, Japan, and it was originally built in dedication to the Jodo sect of Buddhism. Despite its spiritual beginnings, the temple is now known for the cursed doll that lives within it. The story starts in 1918 Japan. Older brother Eikichi Suzuki bought a doll for his 2-year-old sister Okiku. The doll had a black bob cut and a traditional kimono on it. His sister loved the doll so much that she would even name it after her own name. These two would become so attached together like no other. But in the following year, Okiku became gravely ill and ended up passing away. To commemorate her family put her favorite doll on her memorial shrine. Everything seemed fine until after a few days they would begin to notice something very strange. The doll's hair seemed to be actively growing, and every time it would be cut, it would continue to keep growing. Eventually her family would move away but chose to keep the doll in the same place, thinking that Okiku would have wanted that. Now it resides in the Meningi Temple, where it's said that monks will cut the doll's hair regularly as it keeps on growing. At number 6 spot, we have the Saganji Shrine. The Saganji Shrine, also known as a Kappadera, is a Zen Buddhist temple in Tokyo. It got its name from a Japanese mythological entity known as the Kappa. And no, I don't mean that trashy clothing brand. I'm talking about these guys. Kappas are these human-like creatures, small in stature, with webbed hands and feet. It has a turtle shell on its back, and a beak and a saucer on their head, always seem to be filled with water. These creatures would just be known for their troublemaking. They would play games with both animals and humans, and in some cases, the Kappa would impregnate women and drown people in the rivers where they resided. Apparently, when the place was prone to flooding, the people of the area asked for the Kappa for existence, and now many claim that the Kappas are still nearby, claiming the place as their own. There are several statues of the Kappa littered around the shrine, but who knows if one of them turns out to be real. At the hump of our list, we have the Zenkoji Temple. The Zenkoji Temple is a Buddhist temple located in the city of Nagano, Japan. The main temple of Zenkoji has a dark room created for spiritual purposes and acts like a shrine in a way. This dark room follows a pitch black tunnel underneath the temple that monks had supposedly hid the quote key to paradise. In order to do this, you need to hone your 5 senses and have complete focus while trying to navigate yourself through this area. This area is supposed to represent the journey between death and rebirth. It's very simple to understand how this represents the pursuit of enlightenment, which is only possible once you let go of your physical limitations and your concerns. People think that if you find the key, they will be saved, while others believe that if you fail, you will have a series of bad luck and unfortunate mishappenings. Regardless if you succeed or not, this room is bound to have a terrifying experience regardless. At number 4 spot, we have Mount Osor. This is one of Japan's most sacred sites, and for good reason. It's claimed by many to be one of the entrances to hell. First, the temple lies on top of a volcanic plain, and as you roam the area, you will constantly pick up a scent of sulfur, which is already eerie because this is the smell of ghosts and demons, supposedly. But volcanic reasons also make sense. According to Buddhist monks, they say that this place resembles the descriptions of hell and also paradise, so this is why many believe this is a spirit hub. Also around the area are these little jizzle little statues, which were there to guide people who were lost, especially for children to take and keep them for safety. People who have lost their children bring pebbles to the site as an offering for their kids to go easily through the afterlife. Except many of these pebbles are left broken, and many have placed a blame on evil demons in the area. There's also a festival at the shrine where blind women called Itaku bring messages from the afterlife back to the living. So best believe there are quite a few spirits here waiting to be communicated with. At number 3 spot, we have the Tamaya Shrine. This shrine in Tokyo has one of the most famous ghost stories in all of Japan associated with it. The story goes that Owa was a very pure and faithful woman, married to a terrible man named Tamaya Lemon. This man killed her in order to marry a richer woman. While the accounts on how he killed her vary, this all include poisoning her with terrible consequences to her looks. Obviously, she wouldn't be keen on this whole new marriage thing, and she proceeded to ruin the marriage, making him kill his new wife and her family by making them look like her dead self, and finally killed him too. The shrine was built to represent Owa's angry spirit and is still rests south of the station in Tokyo. At our number 2 spot, we're the Kaikuji Temple. This place has nothing really scary about it except the fact that it has mummified bodies on display. Okay, maybe it is a bit scary. These mummified figures are known as a Sokushin Butsu, also known as the living Buddha or Buddha mummies. These are in fact real people, and they are the bodies of priests who belong to the Shingon sect of Japanese Buddhism. All the mummies we see here are priests who made the drastic decision in self-mummification. Just something about a body that is fully intact for hundreds of years that makes it so creepy, right? The process for the mummification would actually be pretty intense. For the first 1,000 days, they would do extreme fasting and exercising. Then on the next 1,000 days, they would reduce their diets to a bare minimum. The last 1,000 days would consist of entombment. Basically, they would bury themselves alive, essentially while in a deep state of meditation, in order to reach enlightenment. At number 1 spot, we have the Taki Shrine. This shrine is consumed in moss but looks very beautiful, but the story behind it completely ruins it. This shrine was established in the Teryaku era of Japan, which was around 900 AD. Legend goes that a man was hunting for yokai and fighting against sorcery in the region. When he was roaming the area, it would slowly get consumed by a dark black cloud. Unable to move further, the man prayed to the gods and fired an arrow up into the clouds. When the arrow came back down, the cloud drifted away, and the spot where the arrow hit is a supposed location of the Taki Shrine. Every now and then, the mountain will be filled with fog and mist, which only adds to the amazing atmosphere of the nature in the area, but it also has a little bit of creepiness in it. And it's also a time when most of the region's spirits seem to be resting. Many believe that many yokai are resting by the shrine, so it's best to visit this area when there's still light outside, because many people have gone missing when night hits. At our number 10 spot, we have Pendle Hill. The trials of the Pendle witches are among the most famous witch trials in English history and some of the best recorded of the 17th century. The 12 accused witches lived in the same area surrounding Pendle Hill in Lancashire. They were charged with the murders of 10 people by the use of witchcraft. Basically, the majority of these witches were a part of 2 major families notorious for hating one another. And as many witch trials went, someone accused another, they accused this person blamed this person, now everyone is being accused. It wasn't until the villagers were dying by means unnatural when the townsfolk decided to condemn these people as witches and execute them. 10 of the 13 were hung, with many having no chance to defend themselves. Nowadays, people claim the ghosts of the witches are still in the area, with many feeling immense anger when visiting the grounds. At our number 9 spot, we have Blackpool Pleasure Beach. Blackpool Pleasure Beach is an amusement park on Blackpool's South Shore. There's specific rides at this park that is supposedly haunted, and that is the Ghost Train, which was built in 1936 with the claim of being the world's most haunted ghost train. Seems like it lives up to its name because visitors say that this ride is haunted by the ghost of Cloggy. Then in 2004, the ride was investigated by paranormal investigators, and they claimed that it had something dark behind it. Cloggy was said to be a former member of staff, but after his passing, it seems like he's still devoted to his role. Guest claims he resides in the end room of the ride, where you see these skeletons riding bikes. Sometimes he will be in one of the bikes greeting you. At number 8 spot, we have Rayman Hall. Rayman Hall is a country house built back in the 1600s, and after nearly 400 years, it stands strong to this day, but it has a dark history attached to it as well. The story goes that in the 1700s, Lady Dorothy Walpole of Rayman Hall was met with an unfortunate fate. She was accused of adultery and was ordered to confine her life within the walls of the home. She would eventually pass away from smallpox, but this was by far the last time we would see from her. These eerie photos capture the infamous Brown Lady of Rayman Hall as she descended down a staircase in the building. She's called the Brown brown lady because every time visitors claim to see her, she's wearing a brown brocade dress. The first documented sighting of Lady Dorothy occurred back in 1835. A visitor said he saw a shadowy woman in an old-fashioned brown dress with hollow sockets for eyes. Nowadays, she is seen watching guests as they explore the building, but in only rare cases she will attempt to grab unsuspecting people. At our number 7 spot, we have the Hampton Court Palace. The Hampton Court Palace was built in 1514, but it wasn't until 1528 where King Henry VIII lived there with his 6 wives. But having that many wives proved detrimental in the afterlife, as many people suspect the palace to be haunted by the ghosts of his ex-wives and many others who lost their life at the palace. Some of Henry's wives are spotted at the palace, including his 3rd wife, Jane Seymour, who tragically passed away in the palace after giving birth. She is said to be walking the corridors holding a lit candle and is usually close to where she passed away giving birth. Another one is his 5th wife, Catherine Howard, who was accused of adultery then dragged into what is known now as the Haunted Gallery. She was later executed in the Tower of London, but it's said that her screams are heard in the gallery at late nights when no one is around. Then in more recent times, CCTV footage caught a supposed ghost at the Hampton Palace. For 3 nights in a row, cameras recorded the exact same fire escape door opening and closing, but on the 2nd night, a slender cloaked figure peeked out of it, and here it is. At number 6 spot, we have Whitby Abbey. Best known as an inspiration for Bram Stoker's Dracula, Whitby Abbey has its own fair share of spooky happenings. These ruins, located in Yorkshire, are said to be home of one of the first monasteries, a place where Vikings ransacked, and also a place where Dracula supposedly visited in the form of a dog. In the late 1800s, King Henry VIII, remember the guy I mentioned with the 6 wives? Yeah, he lost a lot of possessions confiscated from this place. One particular story that pops up from this place involves a nun named Constance de Beverley. She supposedly fell in love with a handsome knight and broke her vow of chastity. When she got caught, she was bricked up alive in the dungeons of this place. Her screams were so loud that she could be heard for days, but now people claim to hear her painful screams and the sounds of her pleading for forgiveness. The area where she was bricked up was never uncovered, which makes many believe she was never fully laid to rest. At the hump of our list, we have the Chillingham Castle. This is deemed by people all around the world to be England's most haunted castle. Chillingham Castle was built all the way back in the 13th century, and for interesting facts, this is the place where King Edward I stayed at before defeating William Wallace, infamous for being the leader for the first war on Scotland's independence. Then over the years, this place has seen countless battles between English and Scots, so many lives were lost here around the castle. One of the most popular ghost stories within the castle involved the blue or radiant boy, who is seen in the castle's pink room and can be heard wailing his eyes out, and sometimes people would claim a boy wearing all blue approaching them before vanishing out of thin air. Another spirit is the ghost of Lady Berkeley, wife of Lord Grey. She was abandoned by her husband and left in the castle to perish. As well, you can hear her weeping as she roams the halls looking for her husband. Many guests report her when they hit a random cold spot in the building. I'm all about castles, but I really don't want to hear crying all day, so no thanks. At their number 4 spot, we have Borley Rectory. This house was famous for being described as the most haunted house in England by psychic researcher Harry Price. Built in 1862, the house was installed as a residence for the parish rector and was instantly the subject of local gossip. Even before the construction of the building, the area where it stands was said to be haunted by the ghost of a nun who many claimed as the Nun's Walk. According to lore, the nun fell in love with a monk in the area. Everything was fine until they got caught. The monk would be executed for his crimes and the nuns bricked up alive within the cellar walls. When the building was completed, the first owners reported unexplained footsteps and even the face of a nun staring at them from a distance. Another incident was when the first owner's adopted daughter was attacked by an evil presence after being trapped in that room. Following the incident, the family noticed bizarre marks on the wall looking as if the ghost contacting the wife. This is when an exorcism took place but failed after the reverend would be struck by rocks and stones. Eventually the house burned down in 1939 and now all that remains is the ruins of this haunted house. At a number 3 spot, we have Boltons Bench. Located in Lyndhurst, England lies Boltons Bench, which is a grassy knoll great for taking walks, but before that it was said that a dragon flew around the area. According to lore, a large dragon supposedly terrorized the village of Burstein before one brave knight, Sir Maurice de Berkeley, offered to assist. The knight waited patiently with his hounds in the goal of catching the dragon off guard, waiting to attack it when it emerged to grab its daily supply of milk. The knight and his hounds pursued the dragon as it fled after being ambushed. The Burstein dragon was finally slain outside of Lyndhurst, where it fell to its death and created the knoll now known as Boltons Bench. Now yew trees stand atop the Boltons Bench, but Who knows, maybe you'll catch a glimpse of a dragon, or even better yet, the dragon bones might be lying just below you. At number 2 spot, we have Minton Chapel. Minton Chapel, located in the wooded area of Hertfordshire, dates back to the origins back in 14th century. Everything we talked about on this list is old, so what did you expect? Here lies a ruined chapel with a dark history associated with it. Reginald Hine was a local historian who researched into the chapel's history extensively. He did so much he ended up falling in love with the place altogether. It was during one of his visits in 1907 that his companion W.T. Latchmore photographed a phantom monk coming out of the ruins. Then after a few decades, Reginald took his own life from strange circumstances at a railway station. It's said that he calmly stepped in front of a train while in the midst of a conversation with one of his friends. At number 1 spot, we have the Tower of London. Since its creation in 1067 AD, the Tower of London has gone through a dark and bloody history. This tower harbors many ghosts, so focus up. In 1483, 2 young princes were murdered inside of the tower, which were discovered underneath a staircase 200 years later. Now guests claim to see the shadowy apparitions of 2 lost boys holding hands as they walk through the halls and floors of the tower. Another spirit is that of Anne Boyle, who was imprisoned and beheaded in the tower in 1536. Many guests claim to see a headless person pacing back and forth the tower at night. And then in 1864, a soldier guarding the tower apparently spotted the headless figure and attempted to stab it, but it's a ghost, so it just went right through it.